Okay, hi. We are live and welcome back to another edition of Learn the Tarot. Today we're going to go over the High Priest or the Hierophant. He is a spiritual leader and he is the counterpart to the High Priestess, which we talked about a couple days ago. So I want to start out with the mantra. So the mantra is embrace your community, honor your past. Traditions like bloodlines will forever last. When things get chaotic, turn to your clan. There is safety in numbers and calm in a plan. Now, if you remember, we've been walking through the Fool's journey, and so now the Fool is he's coming around and he's met with the magician who gave him ideas, and here's our Fool. Here's our Fool. In his journey, he's met with the magician, and he has then moved on to meet with the High Priestess, and he learned a valuable lesson through her. Then he moved on to the Empress and got some valuable stuff there. Then he moved on to the Emperor, got himself some structure, and now we're moving on to the High Priest. So, having created a solid foundation on which to build his future, the Fool is struck with a sudden fear. What if everything he's worked for is taken away, is stolen or lost or destroyed or vanishes? What if what he created isn't good enough? In a panic, he heads into a temple where he finds the Hierophant, a wise and holy man. Acolytes kneel before the man, ready to hear and pass on his teachings. The Fool tells the Hierophant his fears and asks how he can be free of them. There are two ways, he says. Either give up that which you fear to lose it, so it no longer holds power over you, or consider what you still have if your fear comes to pass. After all, if you did lose all you'd built, you would still keep the experience and knowledge that you've gained up to this point, wouldn't you? This is true, the Fool says, but what about the community, society, and friends I've discovered thanks to what I've created? More than knowledge or experience, I value them. If I lost all, I'd lose them too, wouldn't I? Not necessarily, the Hierophant answers, with a warm glow in his compassionate eyes. If your community has traditions that you all share, ethics and beliefs, then you will never lose that fellowship, even if circumstances force you to part. You can even pass such on to children, giving them the same fellowship with each other and with past generations. Hearing this, the Fool feels his heart ease, as if knots of fear have been loosened. A sense of peace blankets him, and he takes a moment to thank the good Hierophant most profoundly. Stepping out of the sanctuary, he makes his way to a meeting with his friends. Tonight they will talk about how they can create lessons and traditions to preserve not only their experience and knowledge, but also their community. So, as usual, let's talk a little bit about the card. I'll put it up to the camera and you guys can look at it, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Let me actually flip this card over for you, and I will reverse my camera around. Alright, so here's our lovely card. So the first thing I want to point out about this card is its purpose, right? So this is our spiritual leader. On a lot of decks, this card will actually say High Priest, or is represented as a bishop or some sort of spiritual leader. And the purpose of this card, the purpose of the High Priest, is to bring the spiritual down to earth. If you recall, the High Priestess, if you recall the High Priestess connects to the esoteric. She is secret. She has solitary rites and rituals that she protects and hides behind her cloak. The Hierophant leads his flock in shared communal rituals. So where the High Priestess is kind of a loner, the Hierophant is all about community and all about your tribe. It's all about the people that you surround yourself with. Things that rituals, rites, traditions that remind you of a shared identity. This is our culture, our societal structures, things that give lives honor and meaning. That's the Hierophant. he teaches, getting closer here, he teaches tradition without making you a prisoner to it. He truly is a spiritual leader in every sense of the way. He is the gateway to higher consciousness, reached through ritualized manners. So, he's represented as a priest on the card, a bishop, but, he can represent any sort of structured, communal type person or situation. He does not favor individuality. Harmony generally cannot be achieved if everyone is marching to their own drum. There has to be some sort of order. There has to be some structure and some community. There's value in community and value in having people with shared feelings, beliefs, and ways of doing things. When the Hierophant shows up, he wants you to blend in. He's all about blending in, surrendering to traditions, surrendering to comfort and security in what's familiar to us and in what has been passed down to us from the different generations before us. There's security and safety in numbers, and you'll often see this card pop up with questions regarding theology, spirituality, ethics, traditions, and these don't have to be religious traditions or religious ceremonies or religious rituals. They can be something as simple as, wearing a suit to a funeral or to a wedding. That's a tradition. Wearing a white wedding gown is a tradition. In the U.S., driving on the right side of the road is a structural, tradition, or, that is incorporated in and reflected in the laws. Bowing your head while a group of people are praying, even if you're not praying yourself, even if you're not a religious person, and staying silent, that is a tradition. You are respecting the community traditions and the community rules. And there's some benefits to this. There's some security in this, and there's some peace to this. And, just like the mantra says, traditions like bloodlines forever last. When things get chaotic, turn to your clan. Rely on those people. Go to your tribe. This is safety, and there is safety in numbers and calm in a plan. That is what he brings. He brings calmness and he brings safety in the form of a community. When things go wrong, communities bind together. We just had those hurricanes that hit, and what happened? We bound together like a community. People went from all over our country to help the people down in the hurricane-ridden places. So anyways, these are the sorts of things that the card refers to, or these are the sorts of subjects that we think about when this card pops up. It can be a warning also to the person who's asking a question to not be stubborn or fearful of change. The purpose of traditions is not to follow them just for the heck of it. The purpose of traditions is to use them to keep alive the spirit and faith of a group of people. When things are going wrong and things feel chaotic, this Hierophant, he quiets the panic and he offers practical advice and spiritual guidance, and that comes in the form of community. He can show up as a teacher, a therapist, an advisor, a priest, a rabbi. He not only answers questions the people would ask of the divine because he is connected to the divine, but he also asks he also acts as the voice of the community. So he's speaking for the people and he's speaking to the people. He is their leader, and he is reminding us to remember where we came from, go back to our roots, the traditions of our family, the lessons of our faith. That's where the answers are. The answers are in that structure. They're in that community. And, it reminds us that we're never alone, right? So this is the card of community. If you are part of a community, even if it's just a gym membership, you are part of a community and you are never alone. So let's talk a little bit about the symbolism on the card itself. So what we have is on the card depicted, a religious figure in a formal church setting. We see pillars. We see him sitting up on a throne of sorts. His hand, so he's got what's called a papal tiara. It is a 3-tier crown, and it's significant within the Catholic Church. It has its own meaning. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, I would suggest you go ahead and do a quick search on papal tiara, Papaltiara, and the Catholic Church, and just give a quick read as to what comes up. You'll find the symbolism, the number 3 symbolism is also evident in his little scepter that he has there, his triple cross scepter, which is known as the papal triple cross. So Papal triple cross. And in the Catholic Church, the crown with the 3 and the staff with the 3 represents the 3 realms of the spirit over which the Catholic Church presides. So, go ahead and do some research on that if you're interested in that. I'm not going to get into too much detail because it doesn't really relate to how to read the card itself. It's simply symbolism that reflects him as a religious leader, a spiritual leader. If you notice, his hand is raised in benediction, and I just want to point out that it is the same hand as our magician. Okay, so this is a connection that this card has to the divine. Just like when we reviewed the magician card, and we talked about how his hand pointing up to the heavens, or the divine, and he was channeling energy from the divine through his body to earth. So the same hand is raised on this card as well. And that's an indication, a connection to the divine, which should be pretty self-evident on a card that is this spiritual in nature. So his hand is raised, same hand as the magician, but unlike the magician who points the way, the Hierophant is a trusted guide and mentor. So he's not just going to show you the ideas, he's going to take your hand and he's going to lead you. He's a mentor. He's a guide. He is not a magician. He's not going to just point you to the ideas. He doesn't give you ideas. He works with you and walks with you. So a couple other things. If you notice at his feet, there's a pair of crossed keys. That represents a few different things. Balance between conscious and subconscious. It's the keys to unlock the mysteries of the divine. And it's also, there's some symbolism there as the keys to heaven and hell. If you notice in front of him, and I mentioned it before, there are 2 people who are kneeling. The Hierophant is bringing them into the church. He is initiating them into the group, into the community. The church, or the community, represents a shared identity group, right? So that's what the church is. The church represents a shared identity group. So what's happening here is these people are being initiated into this shared identity community. If you notice, they're both wearing a yellow sash. Despite having individual designs on their clothing, they share a common yellow sash. And this is representative of the yoke of Mercury, which symbolizes intellectual perception and outer self-perception. Outer self-expression. The clothing being different reflects the individual nature that each of us has, even though we are functioning within a community. And the yellow yoke of Mercury, that yellow sash that you see, is specifically, pointing towards being part of a community. We all wear the same yellow sash. We are all part of the same community. We have a shared identity. We have a shared yellow sash that identifies us as part of the community, even though we are individuals within it. I hope that makes sense for you guys. The other thing I want to point out is, just like the High Priestess, the Hierophant has 2 pillars behind him. But there's a significant difference between him and the High Priestess. And I just want to put them side by side to show you real quick. We're sliding. So the High Priestess card, as you can see, between her 2 pillars is the cloak. And we talked about her cloak, or her sheet, or her curtain, whatever you want to call that shields you from being able to see beyond her. She is secretive, right? She is keeping secrets. The Hierophant, does not have that curtain behind him. So, between his two pillars, there is no veil connecting them. There's no hiding. It indicates open knowledge, whereas the priestess indicates hidden knowledge or subconscious knowledge. So they're very similar looking cards, but they have a very different interpretation. So let me pull this out, hone back in on this guy here. All right, so let's talk about the upright meaning when we see this guy. So if you have this card and it pops up in a reading for you, as always, you want to be cognizant of the other cards that are falling in the spread. But generally, this card is telling us that this is not a time to challenge the status quo. You want to stick to the tried and true ways, stick to the established structure, stick to the traditions, return to your roots, seek traditions, or even start your own, depending on the other cards in the spread that you do. It points towards joining a group, so it might be a club, like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, a bridge club, or it could be a new church. It could just simply be a gym membership. Any sort of community, that's what this card points to, joining a community. It also points towards identifying with a group and a way of thinking that will have a benefit for you and will prompt further learning. So this could be, reflective of a college education, a structured learning, right? So it represents shared knowledge. He doesn't have the cloak that hides what's behind him. We just said that he represents open knowledge. So the card represents a sharing of knowledge, a community of knowledge, right? Learning through formal mechanisms, through institutions, going to college, getting an education. This is your, do I go to college or get a job question? This is the go to college card. So it can also represent, if it doesn't represent something about you yourself, it can also represent a wise mentor or a counselor who you would turn to for wisdom. So again, all of these interpretations, you're going to use your intuition and you're going to use the clues regarding which questions are asked and how the cards apply to those questions and what the other cards are in the spread. But this can also represent, someone, a mentor or a counselor who's in your life or going to come in your life, or a recommendation that that you seek a counselor, that you seek someone who is wise and someone you can learn from. Think of that. This card represents, the teacher who got you working hard in school and got you disciplined, but also made you understand and get really excited about learning. Like, that's this dude. He will teach you and he will get you excited about learning, but at the same time he is guiding you and he is holding your hand and he is helping you learn and understand what you need to learn, what the lessons are. And he's very much about doing that as part of a community and finding that security as part of a community. In the reversed position, so let's flip him around. So in the reversed position, what we have is a card that tells us that you or the person you're reading for, if you're not reading for yourself, is feeling restricted or constrained by structure, rules, and have lost a lot of flexibility and control in their life. So upright, he represents structure, rules, community, but in reverse, he is feeling restricted by those things. Those things are harming you. It may point to a desire to follow unorthodox ways or behave out of character for yourself. This is in the reverse position, this is the breaking the rules card, challenging the status quo, challenging ideas that you once thought were set in stone. This is turning the rules on their head, turning the structure on its head, questioning tradition, considering whether things are right for you, and not caring whether or not they're right for the group. This is the anti-community card. This is the go out on your own, strike out on your own, be your own person. Don't go with the group. can show up when you're feeling pressure to follow the crowd, but maybe don't agree on the direction or the fundamental belief system. This card in the reverse position will pop up if you're not happy with the church you're in, or you're not liking the group of friends that you're hanging with. It can also represent, just like the upright, it can represent a person other than the querent or other than you if you're reading for yourself. It can represent, you know, a boss who rules with an iron fist, right? Someone who is just too hard on the rules, too hard on making sure things are structured and making sure everyone's following the rules, forcing others to conform, and just generally a person who's afraid to challenge the status quo. So it's not a negative. You know, we talked about these cards being in reverse or being in the upright position, and you know, like I said when we started this, the reverse position of these cards doesn't necessarily have a negative meaning. And I'm going to flip the camera around and talk to you guys. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has a negative meaning. It's just the energy is reversed. So where you have with this card, upright, a desire for structure and a, you know, this card pointing towards you being part of a community. In the reverse, it wants you to get away from the structure, rebel against the structure. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. You do you. So that's sort of how the energy of this card works. I hope you guys found this video helpful. I will leave you once more with the mantra, which is embrace your community, honor your past. Traditions like bloodlines will forever last. When things get chaotic, turn to your clan. There is safety in numbers and peace in a plan. Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me any questions you have in the comments. I'll do my best to get back to them. If you're watching this on YouTube later, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel and continue walking through the cards with us. Thanks. I'll see you guys tomorrow.